Thanks for choosing us. Now, government has outlined more details about the proposed Ghana Stabilisation Fund to take off before the end of this month. Now, the operational document gives details about the structure, capitalization, governance, and how the fund will be disbursed. Here's more in this report.
The document reveals that government will provide $500 million as seed capital for the fund, while the World Bank will come on board with the remaining $250 million in terms of capitalization of the Ghana Stabilisation Fund. The document shows that the Ghana Stabilisation Fund will target commercial banks and other financial institutions affected by the domestic debt exchange program. Government supports for the fund will be drawn from taxpayers as well as budgetary allocation. Funding for the prospective banks and financial institutions will be purely on commercial grounds, insisting these are not bailout funds, adding that concessionary commercial rates may be considered with improved governance structures. The recapitalization should be done over 3 years for banks that apply for support. The Ghana Stability Fund would be structured in a way that it will be operationalized through what managers describe as solvency window and liquidity. Government, through the Ghana Amalgamated Trust, may seek some holding in these banks, that is if these financial institutions opt for the equity approach. An independent board is also expected to oversee how the disbursement will be done over the period. Bank of Ghana will act as custodians of the fund.
We'll bring in Dr. Ichiahene later on in the bulletin to react to this development. But moving on, the International Monetary Fund has maintained that Ghana must secure the required financing assurance from its external creditors by next month before its board can approve the next tranche of funds. Now, it's coming after the visiting IMF team passed the government on its first program review. IMF Mission Chief for Ghana, Stefan Rode, has been speaking on a yet-to-be-aired episode of PM Express Business Edition this Thursday at 9 p.m. My colleague George Riafe first asked him why this first review is important.
What was important in the context of this first review was performance since the program approval. As you know, the authorities were committed to meet a certain number of quantitative performance criteria on fiscal, on monetary policy. So we were assessing performance with respect to these quantitative criteria. And there were a number of commitments also that had been made on the structural front, so a number of reforms that had to be implemented in the context of the program. And so we were also assessing performance with respect to these structural benchmarks. The good news is that our assessment is that performance has been very strong, both with respect to the quantitative targets and with respect to the structural reforms.
And it was based on that assessment that you passed a verdict that what? Because I need some clarity. That verdict was that we have passed the first review, or is it a conditional review that has been passed? Because I also get from you that we're supposed to do some things before you can take that staff report to the board on Ghana. Help me out on this one as well.
So what is important to understand is that when an IMF mission comes to the field to make an assessment on the review, we assess performance, and based on that performance we will eventually make recommendations to our management, the IMF management, and eventually to the board. So the agreement that we have at the current juncture is called the staff level agreement because it is an agreement between us, the staff team that was here in Accra for these 2 weeks, and the government and the authorities. The next steps are for our management to endorse the review, and then eventually really the completion of the review and the disbursement of the funds associated with this review. And in this case we talk about another $600 million. So this step will require completion by our executive board of the review. You asked about the conditions or what needs to be done going forward. For us to be able to present this review to our executive board, we need to have what we call financing assurances from official bilateral creditors. You will remember that for us to be able to present the program to our executive board back in May, we already needed a form of financing assurances, and we obtained them. The official creditor committee had committed to provide debt relief to Ghana in a way that is consistent with the program parameters, in a way that is consistent with the financing that is envisaged for the program, and also with the debt targets that the government is aiming to achieve over the medium term. At this current juncture, we also need financing assurances, but because progress is being made in the discussions, the type of financing assurances that we need to be able to move forward with presenting the review to the board entail an agreement on those terms of the restructuring that the government and the official creditor committee are discussing.
So then can we classify this verdict of passing the first review as a conditional pass?
I think the best way to qualify what happened this week is that we have reached a staff level agreement. And the next step will be an executive board level completion of the program. You know, I think it's important to understand that the staff level agreement is a very significant milestone for Ghana. It was also a milestone when we reached staff level agreement back in December on the design of the program. Similarly, we are now at a stage where we have that staff level agreement with the government, and we will be looking at what is happening between creditors and the government to be able to move forward the review to the board.
So I get from you that a staff level agreement is a staff level agreement, but for a lot of Ghanaians who are following this program, those are the questions that they are asking, that when Mr. Rode says a staff level agreement, and there are supposed to be certain things that should be met before the staff can go to the board. What does it mean when we asked about Ghana passing the first review?
So what we call the completion of the first review will happen once the executive board has met and endorsed that review. For this to happen, again, we need to have progress with the official creditor committee on the debt restructuring. There does need to be an agreement there.
Meanwhile, head of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, Professor Peter Korte, says he does not anticipate any difficulty on the part of government to get financing assurance from its external creditors. He's optimistic Ghana will meet its timelines for approval of the next tranche of $600 million. He spoke earlier on Marketplace.
It's very critical for government or for Ghana to obtain this financing assurance, because as part of the agreement, I mean, if you look at the SLA that has been agreed upon, that is a critical requirement. But I believe this discussion has gone on for quite some time. The IMF, World Bank has this G20 framework, which is being worked on for quite some time now. And I believe that they have reached very far with this. Zambia has been able to secure this assurance and is working to their advantage. But I believe that given that we have met all the conditions, the external creditors would work swiftly on this so we could have the second tranche disbursed. I don't foresee any hurdle. I think this assurance will certainly come on board. As to the specific details, we are yet to see to what extent, how deep they will go to ensure that our debt is reduced considerably is what we need. We're currently borrowing quite a lot from the domestic market, buying with treasury bills, and I don't think that is sustainable. So we need this as well, external assurance. We need the external creditors to come on board, and we are certain as to our debt levels. I don't think we need another or further rounds of debt exchange. 2 rounds are enough, and therefore this is the last stage and very critical to us.
Now let's go back to our headline story, where government has outlined more details about the proposed Ghana Stabilisation Fund to take off before the end of this month. And joining me on phone with some views is a finance person banking consultant, Dr. Richmond Echiahene, for his perspective. Dr. Echiahene, thank you so much for your time. Do you agree that the details will provide some relief for the markets, particularly financial institutions seeking to access money from this fund?
And I think it will provide relief. But considering the amount that was discussed in your original paper, we talked about 1.5 billion. Because if you look at the magnitude of the losses that some of these banks made, the 750 is only just a beginning of it. Because the losses were quite significant, and some of them have basically lost all their capital. Some of them are just insolvent. But it's just beginning of maybe better things to come. But I would have thought that before we set the ball rolling, at the beginning of the year, we should have found out all these 1.5 billion to help the bank. Because already some of the banks have problem with Govt. You know, the Ghana amalgamated, the bonds that these people issue to them, the money they issue to them, some of the banks use that money to buy bonds. And this thing has been wiped off. That is why you see in the document, the minister is treating two different things. He's talking about A and A2, A1 and A2. Those with the A2 have a serious challenges because those who took the amalgamated fund had a serious challenge. And that is why I think the minister decided to separate the two. And I think it's a good beginning, but I hope and pray that we'll be able to get the whole 1.5 billion to make the banks more solvent or the financial institutions more solvent.
Right. And do you think that the outline addresses key issues that you have raised in the past?
Well, it hasn't raised the issues, but I think it has dialed quite significantly to some of the issues we raised. Because the papers that we have done all along, we saw the magnitude of the losses. And we thought that the financial stability was just a buffer. But at least for where the minister has started, I think it's just a good beginning. If he can continue with it, as he has described in the document. I've read the document extensively, and I've followed the various, I've taken the boxes here and there. If we're able to do it, it will be in the step in the right direction for the financial sector.
Right. Now, from where you sit, do you think that preferential treatment should be given to Ghanaian banks who are seeking recapitalization?
Well, I've always said that not at where I'm sitting, because we have empirical evidence that all the banks, the external-owned banks, the foreign banks, have already started. I mean, I can mention names of the banks which started about as long as 3 months ago, according to Bloomberg and Reuters. And all the figures, I think they've all started. But the problem, the physical problem that we had in here was the local and the indigenous bank. At least they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot. Apart from one or two, that suffered a lot. The Ghanaian, the indigenous bank really suffered. They suffered. The state-owned suffered massively. And two of the private banks, two of the known private banks also suffered. And I believe if we're able to start with this, it will be a good beginning for these institutions. And so that by the end of the year or beginning of next year, I mean, the whole thing will have to be, the 1.5 billion has to be completed so that we can complete these problems that we have created for ourselves.
Right. We appreciate your time here, Dr. Richmond Echiahene. He's a banking consultant. Let's do some other stories now. And Ghana's government has reopened its offer to exchange loans held by local bondholders for new securities as part of its efforts to enhance debt sustainability. The invitation is expected to holders is extended to holders of eligible bonds who did not participate in a previous swap announced in February. Now, the new securities offered in exchange are expected to be more liquid. Now, additionally, the government may prioritize payments of the new bonds under certain circumstances, potentially improving its cash flow position and supporting debt sustainability. Now, so far, approximately 85% of bondholders have accepted the exchange. This move follows Ghana's recent agreement to swap about $4 billion of domestic debt, building on a previous $7.7 billion debt restructuring in February. Now, to shed more light on this is Benjamin Boachi, Chief Economist at Second Start, a technology company that is building solutions to enhance intra-Africa capital and investment flow. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. What does this mean for debt sustainability in the country? Kindly unmute for me, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, this recent restructuring was an administrative reopening of the existing domestic debt exchange program. So what it says is that the government, the Ministry of Finance was being very thorough in ensuring that every piece of domestic debt that it could potentially refinance and thereby lower their cost of their debt burden, they were going to take advantage of that. So they're going to be very, very pleased. I think they had identified, well over the $4 billion that was ultimately tendered in. But when you add the administrative reopening to the prior rounds of DDEP, you achieved something like an 85 to 90% success rate, which is massive in terms of just an operation to restructure your debt and lower your debt burden. So I'm sure they'll be pleased, and I think it'll be an example for other countries that go the route, the common framework. They'll look at Ghana as a model for being thorough and extensive in their domestic debt restructurings.
Right. Now, how about other African exchanges? What are the prospects?
I mean, we're in a bit of a slump. The geopolitical and global landscape just kind of keeps sending different shocks, and somehow Africa seems to be at the confluence of all of these things, always getting the brunt of these events. So it's a cloudy outlook in the medium term going forward. But in Ghana, in particular, which, I mean, as we heard a little bit earlier, you've seen that growth has been a bit resilient. The currency's been quite stable, and inflation has started to come down, even though it's still extremely high. So for Ghana to be able to show, the type of maneuverings that can be done and that should be done, and the simple fact that the IMF deal that we inked is essentially being successful. It provides a blueprint for other countries in distress, and they'll have to do their very best, to support their economies and their stock markets and exchanges as well.
Right. Before I let go of you, what would be your advice to government?
Well, in the immediate term, restructuring our external debt is the most important thing for us to get done and to accomplish. The government's been a bit quiet about, they've kept those negotiations on the hush-hush, and I'm sure that they're doing everything that needs to be done. I'm not sure that they would need any more advice from me on that front. But in the medium to longer term, the government of Ghana absolutely needs to get its fiscal house in order. And yes, the IMF deal can provide something of a blueprint in terms of how we're spending money to protect the vulnerable and maintain the stability of the macroeconomy. But I think more stimulative approaches to, I guess, particularly in my opinion, the human capital, is where I think the government of Ghana maybe lacks hasn't been as aggressive, and I think that has a lot to do. If you're successful on the human capital front, if you can mobilize capital and invest it in the youth, in people who have the potential to add to the economy, but have otherwise been unable to access the capital they need. If you can mobilize capital to them, I think that'll be transformative. Here at Second Stacks, what we do is we connect capital markets for just that purpose, right? So that people all over the continent have access to capital from all over the continent. And then that's the type of innovation, I think, that we believe deeply will bolster and improve the prospects of the economy on the continent.
Right. Thank you so much, Benjamin Boachi. He's the chief economist at Second Stacks. And you're still watching Business Live here on the Journeys channel with me, Beverly Broom. We take a quick break. We'll be back with more. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Now, leading dairy goods producer Promasidor Ghana has donated over 330,000 cedis to support the cost of surgery of some 7 patients at the National Cardiothoracic Centre at Aidoo. Now, this comes after the corporate social responsibility campaign of the company, Cowbell Impacting Lives, partnered the centre to support financially constrained patients. Now, the ceremony also coincided with a series of social impact activities which form part of the launch of the Cowbell Premium and the Cowbell Vita Rich product. Here's more.
As part of its corporate social responsibility, Promasidor Ghana has donated 335,700 cedis to the National Cardiothoracic Centre of Ghana. The effort, which is part of a partnership with Ghana's only tertiary cardio centre, will see producers of the recently launched Cowbell Premium and Cowbell Vita Rich cater for the surgeries of some cardiac patients. Speaking to Joy Business at the ceremony, Human Resource Manager of Promasidor Ghana, Andrew Bodom, expressed his company's commitment to give back to the society through its Cowbell Impacting Lives initiative.
Our aim is to better the lives of people, but taking it a step further is to ensure that we assist in providing health care to patients, especially those who are unable to afford. Our aim of coming here today is to make a donation to the Cardio Center in providing surgical procedure operation to 7 patients to the tune of $30,000. We believe that through this partnership, such persons would be saved and then they would have a prosperous life.
Communications and Public Relations Manager at Promasidor Ghana, Gideon Kodo, had this to say on the partnership and the new variant recently launched.
Beyond today's donation, which is actually an amount of 335,700 Ghana cedis, which is $30,000 that we are donating to the Cardio Center. It is also to see us support the unit from time to time. We look forward to this being a long-term partnership, and so it is not just a one-off. We're definitely going to have series of other donations to the center. The donation also is part of our activities marking the launch of 2 new variants of Cowbell, which is the Cowbell Premium and also the Cowbell Vita Rich. The whole idea for these 2 new variants is to provide variety in the dairy category space, which we are leaders in, and so whilst bringing in new products to give value and also that nutritive element to the Ghanaian consumer, we also see it very important to give back to the society.
Dr. Ko Inchia Mensah, a cardiothoracic surgeon at the centre, expressed his gratitude for Cowbell's continuous generosity.
The gesture is not just a simple presentation of cash, but you are virtually giving these individuals their lives back to them, because without this surgical intervention, the outcome is bleak for them. We are grateful that you are not making it a one-off donation, and that you have.
Now, the global sports tourism market was valued at $587.8 billion in 2022. 2022, the significant growth in the popularity of sporting events such as the Olympics, the FIFA World Cup, the NBA, and others across the globe are factors propelling the growth of the industry. Countries like Saudi Arabia and China have made significant investments to attract big football names in a bid to leverage on football to boost tourism. Now, in view of this, Joy Sports and Joy Business are organizing a thought leadership program to discuss the economy of football and how Ghana can strategically position itself to attract foreign direct investment. The event comes off today at the Labadi Beach Hotel at exactly 7 p.m. The theme for the event is repurposing our approach to football development. And that's how we wrap up Business Live tonight. For more news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. I am Beverly Broom. Do enjoy the rest of our program.